Luke 22, starting in verse 47. And while he was still speaking, behold, a multitude, and he who was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near to Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said to him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? When those around him saw what was going to happen, they said to him, Lord, shall we strike with the sword? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus answered and said, permit even this. And he touched his ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, captains of the temple, and the elders who had come to him, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs? When I was with you daily in the temple, you did not try to seize me, but this is your hour and the power of darkness. As we've been going through the Gospel of Luke, we often draw from parallel passages in the other Gospels to get a fuller account of what's going on. And all four Gospels follow their own path through the life of Jesus and the ministry of Jesus. But since the whole point of each Gospel is to get to the arrest and the crucifixion and the burial and resurrection of Christ, at the end, they all come together. Even if they've been going in different directions, they all come together in the end. So from now on to the end of the Gospel, we're going to be drawing a lot from the other Gospels to have a better understanding of how it all happened. It would be good if we could have like 4 columns seeing the 4 Gospels parallel, and we could read everything, but we don't have that luxury. So instead of having you going back and forth, I'll just interject the stuff that the other Gospels say. Luke's account of the arrest of Jesus right here, it's the shortest in all of the 4 Gospels. There's a lot of stuff being said in the others. So, but what's the context? What's the context? Jesus was in the upper room having the Last Supper with his disciples. Judas had left to go get this crowd. Jesus leaves the upper room. It's the middle of the night. He goes to the Mount of Olives, specifically the Garden of Gethsemane. It was a place where he was accustomed to going. We pointed this out last week. And the fact that this is where he usually spent the night meant that Judas would know exactly where to find him. He didn't try and avoid his arrest. He could have very easily just gone anywhere else he wanted on that night, but he went to the place where he knew he would get caught. And last week we saw him praying in agony. He had told his disciples to pray, but they were just falling asleep. And last thing we saw, he was telling them to wake up and pray. And he gets interrupted. Verse 47 says, and while he was still speaking, behold, a multitude, and he who was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near to Jesus to kiss him. Now, while Jesus is speaking, it says that a multitude shows up. Who are these people? There's only a few people that are mentioned here, but if you take all 4 Gospels, you got chief priests and scribes. So we're talking about religious people, the religious leaders of Israel coming to arrest Jesus. These are the people who should be turning people to God. These are the people who should be pointing people to Christ. Instead they are arresting him to kill him. Thirdly, we have elders of the Jews. They were not religious leaders, they're more political leaders. We also read, in verse 52, it says, it mentions captains of the temple. These are temple guards. This is like temple police. These are Jews who are guarding the temple. All right? And then we also have, in the Gospel of John, it mentions that there were also Roman soldiers. And I'm sure it probably wasn't very difficult for the Jews to get Roman soldiers, because All they needed to do was say, hey, there's a guy who's going to cause an insurrection, who's going to cause a riot. Hey, do you remember just a few days ago, like 5 or 6 days ago, when he came into the city and people were yelling, hail the King of Israel? Oh, here's a guy who's a revolutionary. We've got to get him. So I'm sure the Romans had no problem sending some soldiers to go arrest Jesus. Plus it's the Passover, and because of the hundreds of thousands of pilgrims that are going to Jerusalem for the feast, Rome has cracked down and has sent a lot of soldiers into the city because they don't want any riots. So I'm sure it wasn't a problem getting some soldiers. And, just on the side, one of the reasons perhaps that the Jews had asked for Roman soldiers could be that early on the Jews had tried to arrest Jesus. We can read about this in John chapter 7. We'll see it on our Thursday evening Bible study. The Jews had tried to arrest Jesus, and they had sent the temple guard, the same people that are here with the Roman soldiers. They had sent the temple guard to go and arrest him, and they came back without having arrested him. And the rulers are like, why didn't you arrest him? And they're like, you know what? We started listening to him, and no one has ever spoken like this man. And they were like, oh my goodness, are you deceived also? None of us leaders believe in him. Anyhow, but so in case they were worried that the temple guard wouldn't do their job again, they bring in some Romans, make sure the job gets done. So we got a big crowd here. This is not just a couple of people. This is a big crowd. Elders, high priests, scribes, soldiers, huge crowd. I mean, this could actually be hundreds of people. And leading the way, out in the front, is Judas Iscariot, which it says was one of the 12. Notice how often when it mentions Judas, immediately it'll just say, one of the 12. That's a sad statement right there. One of the 12. Which means that he had been with Jesus for 3.5 years, heard every word that Jesus preached, saw every miracle that Jesus did. Judas himself had gone out to preach the gospel along with the other disciples. Judas himself had done miracles. Jesus had given the power to the 12 to go out and do miracles. Judas himself had just done all these things, and yet he still betrays him. So it's the middle of the night, big crowd shows up, Judas goes out in the front, and he goes to kiss Jesus. In John, we are told that Jesus knew everything that was going to come about. He wasn't surprised by anything that was happening. And I was thinking about this. You got Jesus, and you have a big crowd with swords and clubs and torches who have come out in the night to arrest him. If he wanted to, he could have sent fire down from heaven to destroy them all. He could have. That's happened before. Remember Elijah, when soldiers were sent to arrest him? Fire came down from heaven, destroyed the soldiers. Jesus could have done that. Elijah did that. You think Jesus couldn't do that? No problem. He could have opened up the ground and have them fall in. That had happened when people were going against Moses and Aaron. Ground opened up, swallowed them up. Jesus could do that. He could have them all go nuts and start killing one another. That had happened when the Philistines were ready to attack Israel. God had caused some earthquake, some commotion within the Philistine camp, and the Philistines started killing one another. Could have done that. There's Roman soldiers there and there's Jews. He easily could have done that. But he doesn't do any of that. Jesus could easily have gotten out of this. First of all, he didn't even need to be there. He could have gone somewhere else. And easily he could have destroyed these people in a second. But he does not do that. This is the point that I want to drive home as we go through the text. Keep that in mind, how easily Jesus could have gotten out of this, but didn't. In Matthew and Mark, we read that Judas had beforehand said to the crowd, this will be the sign, I'm going to go kiss him. And whomever I kiss, it actually says, whoever I kiss, He's the one, seize him and take him away. Those are the words of Judas. And it makes sense because, first of all, it's the middle of the night. And second of all, this is not like today where you have TV, you have magazines, and we know everyone's faces. This doesn't mean that everyone had seen Jesus up close. So maybe they didn't know who it was. It's dark, so we need someone. And Judas needs to make sure that they know who Jesus is. Okay? Don't get the wrong guy. I mean, he wants to get his money. So he goes and kisses Jesus. Verse 48. But Jesus said to him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Now, John had said that Jesus knows everything that's going on. He knew that Jesus was the traitor. He knew that this kiss was the sign so that they would find who to arrest. And he says, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Now, we've talked about this before, but the term Son of Man is extremely important. The term Son of Man is Jesus' favorite title for himself. It's based upon a prophecy in Daniel chapter 7. In Daniel chapter 7, Daniel sees this vision and he says, I saw one like the Son of Man, and to him was given power and dominion and a kingdom, and all nations will bow down to him, and his kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom. And that's why Jesus keeps calling himself the Son of Man. He's making reference to Daniel. And so here Jesus is saying, are you betraying the Son of Man? The Lord of heaven and earth? You betraying me with a kiss, Judas? Really? The kiss, the universal sign of love and affection? And Judas is just absolute hypocrite. Now at this point, we could go on in our text, but something very important happens in the Gospel of John. I won't have you go there, but I'll tell you about it. At this point, Judas has kissed them. Jesus sees the crowd, and he goes out to meet them. He doesn't run away. He goes out to meet them. And he says to them, who are you looking for? And they say, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus says, I am. And they all fall back and fall to the ground. This entire crowd of like maybe a couple hundred people, they all fall to the ground when Jesus said, I am. Why is this important? Throughout the Gospel of John, something that you don't see in the other Gospels, Mark does it once, but something that you see throughout the Gospel of John, we'll see it on our Thursday Bible studies, Jesus often refers to himself as I am. He'll say to the Jews, before Abraham even existed, I am. Unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins. What's this a reference to? If you go through the Old Testament, a number of times, not just once. Do you remember Moses at the burning bush? God says to him, go tell the people that, I'm going to bring them out of Egypt. And he says, who should I tell them is sending me? And he says, I am. I am that I am. Go tell them that I am sends you. It's a reference to God's eternality. It's not that he was, it's not that he's going to be, God just is. I am. That's a term that God uses for himself. That's where we get the term Yahweh from. This is the name of God. In Isaiah you read about it again. He refers to himself as I am. Unless you believe that I am, you will die. And so Jesus, throughout the Gospel of John, he keeps saying, I am, which is a reference to his deity. And so you have this whole crowd that's coming to arrest him, and they say, we're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. And he says, I am. And they all fall to the ground. Extremely important. So, it's at this point, if I'm harmonizing correctly, it's at this point, Jesus has said, I am. Everyone is falling to the ground. And verse 49 says, when those around him saw what was going to happen, they said to him, Lord, shall we strike with the sword? This is how I envision it. Because keep in mind, they had two swords. Remember when they were about to leave the upper room? They had two swords. They're like, we've got two swords. And he's like, that's enough. And so, in my mind, Because what are two swords going to do against a huge crowd that all have swords? But Jesus has spoken. The Son of Man, the Lord of glory, has spoken. They've all fallen to the ground. They're like, we got him. We got him. They get the swords out. Let's go get him. Lord, should we attack? If we have Jesus on our side, no problem. And before Jesus can even say no, verse 50, and one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. Matthew, Mark, and Luke simply say one of the disciples cut off the servant's ear. John says it was Peter who did it. And I'm like, well, even if John hadn't told us, we probably could have figured that one out. But, and you understand, please, that he's not going for his ear. When you get a sword and you swing it at someone, you're not trying to cut off their ear. He's probably going for the neck, and as he's about to swipe the head, the guy probably ducked, and he got his ear instead. That's probably what happened. Verse 51, but Jesus answered and said, permit even this. Permit even, that's a very short statement. In John, Jesus turns to Peter and he says, put your sword away. Must I not drink the cup that the Father has given me? This is something that I must do. This is the Father's will. I must die. I must go to the cross and pay for the sins of the world. He doesn't need Peter to defend him. In Matthew, we've talked about this lately, he says to him, put your sword away. Don't you think that I could at this moment pray to the Father and he would send me 12 legions of angels to come rescue me? Don't you think I could do that if I wanted to? And every time I read that, I'm like, 12 legions. If a legion is 6,000 soldiers, Jesus is saying God could send me 72,000 angels right now and rescue me. You think I need Peter with his sword? Let me tell you something. In the Old Testament, around 720, Assyria was the biggest power in the world, and they had attacked the northern kingdom, conquered the northern kingdom, and then they're ready to come down and conquer Jerusalem. And Hezekiah, if I remember correctly, Hezekiah is the king, and he prays, and there's an army of 185,000 Assyrians. Let me say that number again. 185,000 Assyrian soldiers camped outside of Jerusalem ready to attack. And there's one verse that says, on that night, an angel of the Lord went out and killed 185,000 soldiers in the Assyrian camp. And in the morning, the Jews got up, looked outside, there was just dead bodies. That's one angel. One angel killed 185,000 people. What kind of damage can 72,000 angels do? No problem with this multitude that's coming to arrest Jesus. He could have done that. He could have escaped. Notice, this is all about the arrest of Jesus. It's not really that they came and caught him. He gave himself up. He surrendered to them. Right? Now, only Luke mentions this little snippet at the end of verse 51, and it says, and he touched his ear and healed him. Did he pick up the ear and stick it back on? Maybe. Did he just close the wound? I don't know. But he heals the man. This was a man who came to arrest him, and Jesus heals him. Let me make a quick side note here. Nothing really to do with our text, just the thought. Here's a man who was not a disciple of Jesus. He was an enemy, came to arrest him. And Jesus healed him. Here's a man who didn't have faith in Christ, didn't trust in Christ. He was an enemy. And Christ healed him. Today, there are people who are a bunch of crooks who pretend to do miracles. And they have people come line up so that they can heal them from their sicknesses. And usually they just have people that they've chosen to come in and pretend that they're getting healed. But sometimes real people get in line who are sick, and they pretend and they try to heal them, and when they don't get healed, they say, oh, it's because you didn't have faith. You didn't get healed because you didn't have faith. This guy had no faith whatsoever, and Jesus healed him. Jesus healed many people who did not have faith. Faith, I don't want to diminish the importance of faith. Without faith, no one can be saved. But in order for someone to be miraculously healed, faith was never required. It's about the power of God and the will of God to want to heal them. It wasn't about the faith in them. That was just an aside. Keep that in mind. So, he has healed the man. Verse 52. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, captains of the temple, and the elders who had come to him, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs? I mean, this is pretty ridiculous if you think about it. Jesus wasn't a violent man. He wasn't armed. He never went around starting riots, starting trouble. He never harmed anyone physically. And so you have this huge crowd with lanterns and torches and swords coming out to grab Jesus as though he's this terrible criminal that needs to be caught. In verse 53, he says, when I was with you daily in the temple, you did not try to seize me. Right? This entire past week, he had spent every day, he would go out and sleep either at Bethany, but usually at the Mount of Olives. That's where he'd spend the night. But he would spend the entire day in the temple grounds preaching in front of everyone all week. Why didn't you arrest me then? Well, he hadn't done anything wrong. They couldn't really arrest him. He wasn't a criminal. He hadn't broken any laws. But these people are the criminals. You know, when do criminals do their work? At night, when no one can watch, when no one can see what they're doing. They didn't have the guts to go and arrest them during the day, so instead they do it at night when no one is watching. And so Jesus rebukes them for that. How come you never arrested me during the day and you're coming out at night like you're coming to arrest a criminal? I didn't do anything in secret. But he says, but this is your hour and the power of darkness. You know, John chapter 3 says no one can do anything unless it is given to him from God. Remember when Jesus was before Pilate and he wasn't defending himself, and Pilate is like, why aren't you defending yourself? Don't you realize that I have the power to kill you or to release you? And Jesus said, you would have no power over me unless it was given to you by God. And so these people here, Jesus says, this is your hour. This is the hour that has been given to them to do their evil, to do whatever their evil hearts and their dark hearts desired to do. And they arrest him. They arrest him. The next verse is having arrested him. Matthew and Mark add the sad note that as soon as he was arrested, all the disciples fled. Well, that's our text, but let me give you 3 big lessons to close. Number 1, seeing miracles doesn't change people's hearts. You're like, what you talking about? Do you realize that Jesus did a miracle in front of this crowd? Healed the guy's ear. Ear had come off. Took it, stuck it back on in front of this entire crowd that came to arrest him. Did they fall to their knees and say, oh my goodness, this must be the Messiah, let's worship him? No. Instead, they arrest him, take him to kill him. Doesn't matter that he just did a miracle. Who cares? Miracles don't change people's hearts. Do you remember, and this happened all the time, because the miracles that Jesus did, they were out in the open. Where are all the people that Jesus has healed at this moment? Where are they? Where are all the people that Jesus fed? Where are they? Jesus has done miracles all over the place. When he raised Lazarus from the dead, this was public. Everyone saw it. The man was dead for 4 days. He had already started to decompose in the grave when he was resurrected. And when the Jews saw that, what did they say? Oh my goodness, Jesus must be the Messiah. No, they're like, they don't deny the miracle. They're like, man, if Jesus continues like this, everyone's going to believe in him. We've got to kill him. Makes no sense. Seeing is not believing. If you have a hard heart that does not want to believe in Jesus, no amount of miracles is going to do it. These people saw the miracles and didn't happen. People are saved when they hear the word of God and the Spirit of God changes their hearts. Number 2 lesson, outward association with Jesus is not enough. Judas, everyone thought Judas was a Christian. Spent every day with Jesus for 3.5 years. Did miracles. Preached the gospel. You can have people today who are in church. Preachers. You can have people who are very religious, but unless they have repented of their sins, trusted in Christ, means nothing. Just like it meant nothing with Judas. You've got to have something more than just outward religiosity. And third big lesson, and we've said this many times before, and I've talked about it throughout the sermon today. Throughout all this chaos that's going on, God is still in control of it all. Nothing has gone outside of the plan. Everything is according to his plan. Jesus could have gone somewhere else. He didn't. Jesus could have called angels down to destroy them. He didn't. He could have said to Peter, yeah, go get him. He didn't. Instead, he surrenders. He surrenders. Because he wanted to do God's will and to go and die on the cross to pay for your sins. God had a plan, and Jesus carries it out to perfection, beginning to end. And so, we should eternally glorify him for that. Thank you for your attention. Shall we pray?